they are so happy. And just that's when real estate really starts to come full circle for me, is when I can just have those success stories of getting them exactly what they want and just seeing their whole life just start to flourish and take shape. So that's what makes it super rewarding.
My name is Kevin McIntosh, and this is The Closing Table, where we talk to experts about their experience in real estate all across the country. Let's go. Welcome back to The Closing Table. I am your host, Kevin C. McIntosh, and joining us on this episode, we have the pleasure of speaking with another top producing real estate agent, Kristy Flavin. How you doing?
Doing great. Thanks for having me.
Did I say that name right?
Yeah, you did. You got it.
All right, just making sure. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Appreciate it, and thank you for being here, taking time out of your very busy schedule. But we are here to share knowledge, but I like to start things off a little cooler, icebreaker for you, just to start things off a little bit more fun. It's called word association, Kristy. Couple words right here, all related to real estate, but I want you to give your initial reaction to it, whether that's a corresponding word, definition, a story that you may have, whatever the case. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, let's do this. First one, commission.
Pays the bills.
True.
Pays the bills.
Homeowners insurance.
Much needed. Absolutely needed. Have to have it.
Property tax.
The worst. I take that back. Depends on where you live. Where I live, the worst.
Yeah, perspective. Short sale.
Not as common as we used to see. Still see it a little bit, but definitely saw it more back in 06, 07, 08 and coming out of that time period.
Right.
So kind of not as prevalent as we used to see.
Got you. Last one, land contract.
Great option. I think an option that a lot of people don't think about very often. And if the seller and buyer can come to some good terms, it's a great option to purchase an investment property or a single family home.
It's interesting. Interesting.
Yeah.
Might have to pick your brain about that a little bit later. Well, thank you so much, Kristy. Starting off playing our icebreaker just to get things nice and casual and comfortable.
Yeah.
So now this is the point where I like to separate the person from the professional. If you can, 60 seconds or less, tell us, who is Kristy outside of real estate?
Well, I'm a mom, first and foremost. I'm a mom of two beautiful girls, one who is going to be a sophomore in high school and the other who will be a seventh grader. So I am just in the thick of the teenage years. Right. Yeah, it's a busy time, but I absolutely love it. I love sports. They play sports. I used to play college basketball. So that's just a huge part of our lives. I love to travel.
Nice.
And both with my kids, without my kids. I love to,
I know, right?
I just need a little bit of time sometimes. I like to travel internationally and in the United States, have did quite a bit of that and hope to continue to do more. And yeah, I mean, they just, between my kids and real estate and family and friends, just stay super, super busy.
Right. I know. Right. Yeah. Good. There you go. I like to hear that about our guests and our agents. You're more than just the business and the professionalism. You are, like you said, a mom and you have a whole family. There's things you like to do outside of that. Great to know. So let's get into it. The market that you currently serve, to start off with, can you describe it for our audience who may have never been there, geographically where you are, where you serve, and then let's get into some of the real estate economics.
Yeah, so I live in Plymouth, Michigan, so which is in Metro Detroit, so southeastern Michigan. But I think what a lot of people don't understand is that I'm actually, or really real estate agents in general in Michigan, we can serve clients all over the state of Michigan. So while my primary area is Southeast Michigan, I can really go anywhere throughout the state. But yeah, I do live and work in the Plymouth Northville area. So the bulk of my business is in Metro Detroit. Um, but I'm definitely happy to kind of get outside of this area because I didn't grow up here. So kind of getting back to my
Mm,
hometown, my area, which is over by Hillsdale County and Jackson County area. I actually have a listing and a buyer over there as well right now.
okay.
So geographically, that's what I cover. In terms of this market, though, here in Southeast Michigan, I mean, it still remains super strong. Inventory is still low. However, things are kind of starting to improve from an inventory perspective in certain areas. Um,
Okay.
we are we're still on an average throughout the entire MLS at about an 8 day on the market. So
On the market.
yeah, so
Okay.
that's still pretty
Yeah.
small. I mean, traditionally that number is usually around 30 days. So we've been in
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
this really low number for quite a while, a little over a year or so or more. Housing
Right.
prices remain strong. They're actually increasing a little bit. The average sales price in this area that I work in is increasing from where it was in January, I should say. So we kind of took a little bit of a dip, and now we're on an incline again.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, I've had actually my best start to the year. So from January of this year until now,
Okay.
I've had my best start to the year in the last 5 years. So things are looking good.
Oh
Yeah,
wow.
yeah,
All right.
yeah,
Okay. I'm glad you said that. Few things I want to touch on. One, let me tell you, I took note. You said housing prices are strong.
yeah.
And you just mentioned the fact that you're starting the year off right. So I want to clarify, what perspective are you speaking on when you say housing prices are strong, and define that?
Yeah, so I think sometimes people, when they watch the news, they get a little bit scared when they hear interest rates are rising and there's going to be a housing market crash. We're we're in
Mm-hmm.
this industry in Metro Detroit and Southeast Michigan. We are not seeing that impact the housing prices. Yes, our buyers kind of, some of the buyers are pumping the brakes a little bit because the interest rates rather are increasing from what
Mm-hmm.
they were. But again, people always need to move. So they're always going to be looking for a house. And from a seller's perspective, the prices or that sales price is still pretty high because inventory is still low. So there's multiple buyers for their house in most cases.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay. Thanks for
Sure.
clarifying that for me. Also, you spoke on which I also know, when you get licensed as a real estate agent, you are licensed for that state, not just like a town or anything like
Correct.
that. And you highlighted that. But the thing about it is, and I'm glad you brought that up, because I have guests who say, "Yeah, I serve my entire state and another state," or "I actually only focus on this region within the state," or some people even say, "I only work on my
Yeah.
town."
Hmm.
So how do you feel about that? Do you feel you feel like agents should actually service the entire state that they're licensed, or should they be focused on one area? What do you think?
So for me personally, I do most of
Please.
my business within my sphere of influence. So family, friends, referrals, just people that I know. So I'm not one that has my name on a billboard or on the grocery store carts, all over, where I'm getting phone calls from a wide variety of people all over the place. So I
Right. Okay.
start by having a narrow base of people, which then kind of keeps me narrowed down in a geographic region. If I have a buyer contact me that says, "Hey, Kristy, I would love for you to help me find a house in Grand Rapids." Well, you know what? I'm probably going to refer that buyer out to somebody, a colleague that I know over on that side of the state, because logistically, for me to get over to that side of the state multiple times to show them houses when a house hits the market is
Right.
just it's just not functional for me to do. However, if there's a
Mm-hmm.
listing in Grand Rapids or Traverse City, or somewhere that I can get to, um, I can list a house because a listing is a little bit easier than showing a bunch of houses to buyers. So I'm a little bit selective when I say that I'm licensed in the whole state and I can work the whole state. I'm a little bit selective on whether it comes, as a listing or it comes as a buyer.
Nice. Love it. Love it. Okay. Great
Mhm.
explanation too, by the way. Makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, whatever's practical, whatever makes sense. You
Yeah.
you wasting three and a
Yeah.
half hours, 3 hours going
Yeah.
from, across the state essentially.
Yeah.
So it would make sense. Okay. So once you touched on the fact that you'll get calls from, referrals or, different people about, hey, I have a house that I'm looking for, or hey, I have a house I'm looking to sell. But do you have a story of an untraditional way that you got a client or a lead for a
Yeah.
client? Maybe you bumped into someone in a grocery store or whatever the case. Please
Yeah.
share.
So kind of I guess not a traditional lead that I received was actually from an agent that I work with in my office. They actually gave me
Mm-hmm.
a lead
Mm-hmm.
of a relative of theirs, and they're like, "Hey, Kristy, listen, I'm going to give you this client, and it's a relative who I'm really close to, but I can't work with them. And you have the personality and the patience and everything that's needed to work with this relative. So I'm just gonna hand them over." And you don't really see that very often because, I mean, typically as an agent, again, I come back to that
Yeah.
circle of, influence, or that sphere of influence. That's who you work with: your family, your friends, your
Right.
acquaintances. So to get a lead from an agent that you work with in your office who has a relative that they can't work with, that doesn't happen very often. But honestly, it ended up being a great experience. I was happy to help, and yeah, we closed the deal, so it was good.
That is so funny because I feel like everybody loves their
Oh
family,
yeah,
but we all gotta say at
oh
least
yeah,
one person in their family. You're like, yo, I love you, but you gotta stay away from me. I can't
yeah,
stand you, like,
yeah.
like.
It just wasn't a
So I just imagine like, yo, I love my aunt, but I can't deal with her. Please, just you can
yeah,
take it. I'm fine.
yeah. That's kind of how it was. So
That's hilarious. Yeah, that's definitely an untraditional way of doing it, but to your point too of starting off with that spear or your close circle, your inner circle of people, family and friends and things of that nature.
mhm.
I hear it's often like the case of the first few years you put boots to the ground, you go out, you make your leads, or you use your inner circle to get your leads. And then once you put in that work, you show that you have great work ethic. It kind of just goes from there. They just refer you to other
It
people
really does.
and things like
It
that.
really does, and
Mm-hmm.
that's really how I've been
Mm-hmm.
able to grow my business, is by doing that. But I'm telling you what, you have to really remind even that sphere of influence. You have to remind them that you're an agent. I mean, even friends and
Yeah.
family that that see you all the time, or maybe they don't. They just see you on social media, or you run into them a couple times a year at a Christmas party or whatever. And even though you tell them that you're a real estate agent or that you can help, they forget. So you have to continue to remind them. But as as you do
That's
that for
true.
yourself, I mean, it just continues to build. But probably by year 4 and 5 is when things really start to click and start coming
That's
together.
literally the
Mhm.
same
Yeah,
timeline. Yeah, it must be law
yeah,
because I hear about 3 to 5 years. That's the
yep.
same thing I hear.
Hmm.
Wow, that's
It is
crazy.
very true.
Okay, okay.
Yep.
I got a scenario for you,
Sure.
Kristy. Imagine you working with a couple who's just starting their family and looking for their first
Yep.
home. Can you share a heartwarming story of a previous client in a similar situation where you were able to provide them with their perfect family home and be a part of their journey as they created these new memories together?
First of all, that is my favorite type of client to work with. I love working with first time home buyers, and some agents don't. Some agents are like, "Oh, there's too much work. It's high stress. It's high emotion."
Uh,
Sometimes, a lot of times they're
mm-hmm.
younger. So, I
Yep.
love it. So there's this one particular couple that I've worked with. They both worked at the University of Michigan. They were in the health field. And they said, "Kristy, we need to be in driving distance to Ann Arbor, so that we can commute to
Mm-hmm.
work pretty easily. Our schedules are kind of rough, but we want to be in nature. We don't want to be in like a suburb, a typical suburb, city living." Okay, so I'm,
Right.
taking Ann Arbor or U of M, drawing a radius around it. And they said, oh, and, oh, by the way, eventually we want to start a family. So we need it to be good schools, all the things, right? Oh man, this is going to be a little bit tough. Well,
Mm-hmm.
I ended up finding them something, and they're on a lake. They have the most gorgeous view. It's a small starter home. I'm assuming at some point in time they'll outgrow it, but their family has expanded. And the sweetest thing is, I was able to refer them to the daycare and preschool that my daughters went to when I lived out that direction. And so now their little kids are growing up in that same daycare preschool setting, and they are so happy. And just that's when real estate really starts to come full circle for me, is when I can just have those success stories of getting them exactly what they want, and just seeing their
Mm-hmm.
whole life just start to flourish and take shape. So that's what makes it super rewarding.
Right. I imagine you see the look on their
Yeah,
faces when you finally like, yo, we got it. And then you give them the
yeah,
keys and they happy, they hugging,
yeah.
and
Oh
oh
yeah,
man, it's
yeah.
beautiful. It's
It is.
beautiful. I imagine you just feel like like you are just literally part of the
You
family. Like
do.
doing stuff like that is just so
Yeah,
crazy.
some clients you do. You kind of become part of their family. Yep.
That's the lighter side of what you do,
Yep.
being a real estate agent.
Hmm.
Let's get into some of the difficulties, right? I'm sure you have dealt with difficult and demanding clients also.
Yeah.
So can you please tell us a scenario where you've had to deal with that, and how you ended up kind of smoothing things out?
Yeah, it's definitely not all roses in every real estate transaction. I mean, there's a lot of times you're helping, someone through a divorce, or you're helping someone through a death of a family member. So, you've got different sides of the family that, are on the trust, or that managing the estate and so forth. Or it's just a situation that you have a buyer that is just super critical and super picky. And in those cases, for me, those are the hardest to work with. And I kid
Mm,
you not, nothing against this profession whatsoever. I have so many good friends in this profession, but engineers showing up, yeah,
really?
showing houses to an engineer
That is
is,
random.
is
I
really,
wasn't expecting that.
yeah, it can be really tough. Not all of them. I'm not going to stereotype it and say all of them.
Of course,
But
of
my
course.
specific experience with this one particular couple, who one of them was an engineer, I mean, it did not matter if I showed them the best house on the block. And I mean, they would go through it with a fine tooth comb, and we would fail inspection after inspection after inspection. We'd get a house under contract, get the inspection ordered, and they would fail it. The buyers, my clients, would fail the inspection over the littlest
Hmm.
things. And we kept, and they have to pay for these inspections every time. And it's, how many more are we
Yeah.
going to pay for? So, but that experience for me was a really, really tough experience. So, yeah.
You have to tell us how that ended. Like I'm at the cliffhanger
Yeah.
now. Like how did
So
that
so that
end? Like
particular client, to be honest, I'll be frank with you. I never found them a house. I never did. And they just,
mm,
we ended up just kind of parting ways. There was no animosity, nothing whatsoever, but they just
it
stopped looking.
happens.
And
Mhm.
I think as an agent, you have to you have to have those experiences to grow and to get better, but to also not beat yourself up about it, because sometimes it's just not the right fit.
Right.
And to be quite frank with you, it can be a time waster in your business if you just continue to do this with clients that probably aren't ever going to really purchase anyways, because they're that critical. So
Right. No, I get it. I
yeah.
get it 100%. And I love that you were honest enough to share that
Sure.
too,
Yeah.
because it happens. It's part
Yeah.
of the game. Like it didn't and like you said, it didn't end in a bad
No.
way. It's just, hey, this isn't, maybe this is bad timing,
Sure.
which could definitely be a factor. Just bad
Yep.
timing for the market. Maybe you need to wait a little while when more homes and things of that nature. But ultimately it's no need to have bad blood at the end of that type of
Oh, never,
relationship.
never.
I'm glad that worked
Yeah.
out. Yeah.
Yep.
You have experience in both residential and investment properties, which I like to hear
Yeah.
about. Can you share a memorable story of a client who was looking for an investment in a property, and how you helped them navigate and actually reach those goals of getting one?
Yeah. So investing is I love to help. I love to help investors. I the biggest thing with investors is someone that's starting that is just educating them on the process. And one investor in particular that I worked with, it I think the hardest part is to realize that this isn't an investment property and you're not going to live there. So this particular investor
Mhm.
showing them properties, and every property we went into, it was like, oh God, but the carpet and the duh, and I can't live here, and down the street there's this, and I would never be able to do this. And I said, but you're not living here. This is an investment property. Yes, you're gonna
It's
turn
true.
around and make it nice for your tenants, or whatever your goal is as an investor, but this isn't where you're living. And that was actually a hurdle I had to get over as an investor too, because when I started, I would go into these investment properties and I'm like, oh gosh, this is how can we do this? But that's
Right.
probably my biggest, when I work with clients who are investors, that's kind of the biggest hurdle we have to get over. And it has to then become a conversation about the numbers and what the return on the investment is going to be, whether, you're looking for a short term or a long term property, or what you're doing. But that was a real fun experience with that client, because every house we went into, they're just like, oh, but I don't like it. Well, you don't have to like it because you're not going to live
Yeah.
here. So
Right. Right.
yeah.
No, that's a great point.
Mhm.
For a minute, and I'm gonna be transparent with this. For a minute, I was thinking, I mean, yeah, you would want a home for, your a tenant that you would want for yourself. But then I thought about it and I was like, no, because your taste could be a lot more elaborate, luxurious, and for yourself, you might want the state of the art and things of that. You don't necessarily want to do that for someone who's renting your property. You don't want to
Right.
have state of the art this and that,
Well,
right?
yes,
Or
that's a
please.
good, takeaway that you just said, and kind of wondering where that was going. So you want, when you do investment properties, and let's talk just long term rentals, let's say, not
Okay.
Airbnbs, not ones that people are
Hmm.
just renting for a couple nights. You want to make that investment property nice. You want to make it so that you attract good, high quality tenants. I'm not
Right.
saying that you don't want it to be nice, but yeah, you would be silly as an investor on your return if you put in top of the line cabinetry, or you put in top of the line flooring. It doesn't make sense, right? Because you're going to
Hmm.
have turnover. So you have to be smart with your
Exactly.
investment. And yeah, those things might not be what you want in your home, or that you would like, but you have to, it's all a numbers. It's all a numbers game. But I will preface that is, it still has to be nice, because you do want to
For
attract
sure.
quality tenants. Hmm.
Has to be up to certain
Yeah.
codes. Has to,
Hmm.
you want it to at least be durable for the tenants that may come in and
Yeah.
out. But at the same time, something that's
Yeah.
easy to maintain, that type of
Hmm.
thing. So that's a new perspective. I'm glad you put that
Yeah.
in a new look for me. You said you like to travel.
Yeah.
I know traveling the world is very exciting. I got a trip or two
Mhm.
coming up myself. So have you ever come across a unique architectural style or design inspiration during your travels that you've been able to incorporate into your profession?
That's a good question. So I'm actually going to take that and just take my travel and kind of flip it to more, how does travel influence the clients that I work with, more so than like a design. Just because, I've been to Italy and Switzerland and Africa and England and Scotland and Wales and all these places, but I don't necessarily pick up
Yeah.
on design elements, but what I pick up on is the diversity of those cultures. And with working in
Right.
Southeast Michigan, I work with a really diverse population, so I can take all of that travel experience that I have, and kind of learn about those cultures and how I can work with clients here that might be from those areas, or have that influence as well. So yeah.
Good point.
Hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
Oh wow, I like
Yeah,
that. Man, that is deep. That's deep because I never even thought about it like that. Like you can technically everyone from this country is from
yeah,
another. You know, we're from different backgrounds, ethnicities, cultures, and when you go visit those actual countries where a lot of people are from, you can kind of understand their
yeah,
culture and where they come from. Some things that they may like, you can kind of surprise some of your clients with some. That
yeah,
is look at okay, Kristy.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
genius,
No, it's
actually. I
fun.
like
That's
that.
what makes it fun.
Hey, so earlier when we were talking about land contracts, you said they can be a great idea. I don't think I've heard that too often from an agent. So I want to kind of elaborate on that a little bit. How do you get involved as a real estate agent when it comes to a land contract? And I mean, yeah, just elaborate on that
So
first and
so
foremost.
land contracts. So they only land contracts will only work if you have a good seller and a buyer that can come to a decent agreement. So let me give you an example
Right.
of one that I had that popped up just recently. So I had a
Mm,
lake house for sale, and this lake house was priced in the 800 range. And one of the buyers that walked through the house said, "Would your seller be willing to entertain a land contract?" And my seller was willing to entertain that because one, they didn't have a mortgage on the property, so they owned it free and clear, and they weren't
okay.
in they they didn't have to be in a hurry to collect all 800,000 right away. So they were able to. However, with that being said, my client, the seller, wanted to see a decent amount of money put down for the land contract
Mm,
in a really short payoff time. So if the
right.
buyer was willing to put, say, $200,000 down and pay off the land contract in 2 years at an interest rate that those sellers and buyers, agreed upon, that was going to be a pretty good
Mm-hmm.
deal for my seller, because remember, from a tax advantage from my seller, they're not collecting all 800,000 right away. They're collecting 200,000 and then the payments that they're getting over the next couple years, right? So it's an advantage
Mm-hmm.
to my seller. It's an advantage to the buyer because the buyer was having a little hard time figuring out what financing they were going to do with a traditional bank. So really, when it comes to land contracts, the seller becomes the
Mm,
bank. The seller is the bank.
right. Right.
Now, let me tell you this. I
Mm.
will never enter into a land contract situation unless there's an attorney that is reviewing the document,
I bet.
or I
Yeah.
say to my seller or a buyer, "Hey, you need to have an attorney review this," because
Mm-hmm.
you want to make sure that the language is very, very clear. And I have to protect myself because I'm not an attorney. I'm
For
not an
sure.
attorney. So,
Mm-hmm. Wow, wow. That okay. So does your commission do you work with the lawyer to get your commission
nope.
to your commission
So,
is the
what's
same or
great? Yeah,
uh,
what's great
no?
is that from an agent standpoint, you get the full commission right up front. You get the full
Mm.
commission right
Oh
up front.
wow.
Yeah. So from an agent standpoint, it's really good. Let me also tell you about a land contract on the investment in the investment world. So, for example,
Mm-hmm.
I have, along with my business partner, I have a multifamily unit. So it's 6 units, so 6 apartments in
Mm-hmm.
one building. And we, as the buyer of that multifamily unit, we entered into a land contract with the seller, and it was advantage to us because we didn't have to front all the money up front, because we knew we were going to have to make repairs on this particular multifamily building over the course of
Yeah.
some years. So it kept us our cash in
Mm-hmm.
our pocket to make those repairs. The seller agreed to do land contract because they didn't want to take the big tax hit of, you know, taking all this money in at one time because they weren't going to roll it over into another property. So it worked advantage to them. Now, our
Mm.
terms are a little bit longer, they're 5 years, but still that's advantage us, advantage seller as well.
For sure.
Mm-hmm.
For sure. And also you are dropping some gems. First off, Kristy, I love
Thank
it.
you.
But I want to be clear for our audience and just for
Mhm.
anybody. When you say there were tax advantages for the seller who did agree to that land
Yep.
contract, you mean in effect, just like what you just said, um, they aren't faced with the capital
Yes.
gains tax ultimately because they aren't getting that lump sum of cash all
Yep.
at once.
Correct.
Correct?
Yep. If they're not rolling it
Beautiful.
over into another property, which in my
Another
two
property.
situations they were not. Sometimes they are, so it's not really a huge deal for the seller. But in these cases, they
Mm-hmm.
weren't. Mm.
I'm starting to feel smart, man. I'm actually getting it. I love it, Kristy. You connecting dots for me. I
Well,
appreciate
good.
it. Let's take it back. Let's take it all the way
Mhm.
back to where I don't know your situation
Mhm.
now, but let's say you're an aspiring
Sure.
homeowner in
Mhm.
2023. Knowing what you know now with the knowledge and resources available, what approach would you take to owning your first home?
So the first thing is you just have to be prepared. You have to
Mm-hmm.
educate yourself, or you have to find somebody that you can trust that can educate you about homeownership. I think oftentimes an aspiring homeowner, they, they immediately go to Zillow. They're just like, I'm going to find a house right now. Like, and I want to see this house and I want to go into it. And then and then I'll go and talk to a lender and then I'll figure out how I'm going to buy it. I actually would not
Mm-hmm.
recommend that path. Get prepared, go to your bank, get a pre-approval, see what you qualify for, first of all. Um, Save money so that you have a decent amount of a down payment, so that you can get into the best loan program as possible, and then reach out to a qualified agent that can make sure that you did all those steps correctly, and then get yourself set up on a search and start looking at homes. The other thing I would tell an aspiring homeowner is you really need to think about location, 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 as opposed to the house.
Right.
Because you can change a house, right? You can change the carpeting, you can change the exterior, if you don't like blue siding and you
Mm-hmm.
want green, or, the landscaping or the kitchen. You can change all those things, but what you can never change is the location of a house. So if you're an aspiring homeowner, you really need to make sure that, if you don't want to live next to a train track, don't look at houses next to a train track, because the train track isn't going
For real.
anywhere.
It's not going
No,
nowhere.
no. So, and lastly, don't overextend yourself. I mean, if your lender tells you that you can afford, $300,000, you know,
Mm-hmm.
have them run the numbers so you know what that monthly payment's going to be, and go below it. Because, I mean, a
Mm-hmm.
house is a house, but a home is a home. You can make a house a home by the family that lives in it, by your person, your own person. But a house is just a structure, and don't overextend yourself just to get something that you think looks cool, or, that you're really not going to be able to afford. And then lastly, I touched on this a little bit, is it's so true, and it sounds a little bit cliche, but you really do need to hire a good agent.
Yeah.
I actually, I didn't say this in the intro, but I used to be a teacher prior to this, and then got into real estate, and did a couple other little things in between. But you really need to have somebody that can educate you throughout the whole process and clearly communicate things with you, and make sure that they're actually doing the work for you, not just for the commission check.
Right.
And I unfortunately, I I see it happen all the time, where an agent just doesn't have their client's best interest in mind. And then I see also a lot of really great agents who do have your best interest in mind. So definitely just make
Oh
sure you
yeah.
do your research and hire a good agent.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Couldn't have said it better myself. For sure. For sure. And that one of the things that you said definitely speaks to something I've always heard about in real estate, which is you want to aim to try to get the ugliest house in the nicest
Yeah,
neighborhood.
yeah,
Because I mean, that's only going to bring that value of that home up. I mean, as opposed to getting the nicest house in the ugliest
yeah,
neighborhood or unsafest
yeah, yeah.
neighborhood.
There's a
So,
lot that goes into it. So
mm-hmm, And that's why you hire a professional real estate
Yeah.
agent that can lead the way
Yeah.
for you. Thank you so much, Kristy, pulling up a chair to the closing table. We appreciate you for being a guest. At this moment, if you have any last words and or want to tell the people how to reach out to you, please do so now.
Sure. Yeah, first of all, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. I'd be happy to help anybody that, any of your listeners, to see if I'm a great fit. I want it to be a great fit for the client as well as a great fit for myself. I work for Signature Sotheby's International Realty. And you can reach me, my phone number, 734-646-5082. Feel free to reach out.
Love it, love it, love it. Thank you so much. I learned so much here on this episode. I hope you did too. And for our YouTube audience, if you got to this point in the episode, please do us both the favor and hit the like button. We would appreciate that. Make sure you also subscribe to our channel and share the content also. And if you are listening on Apple, Spotify, or any other podcast platforms, please do the same. Give us a like, a 5-star rating, and subscribe for our latest content. Kristy, I like to leave our audience with a question before they leave the chat. So audience, this is for you. How do they trip overseas or to another state inspire your current home structure or decoration? Let us know in the comments below. Besides that, we will talk to you next time.